Live from London, this is BBC News. The US Secretary of State warns America could stop trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine unless progress is made in the coming days.
If it's not possible, if we're so far apart that this is not going to happen, then I think the president's probably at a point where he's going to say, well, we're done.
Ukraine takes the first step towards signing a mineral deal with the US and says a new round of negotiations begins next week. Nearly 4 months since the fall of the Assad regime, fears that the new Islamist-led government may be putting social and religious freedoms at risk. Italian police confirm a British couple are among 4 people killed after a cable car crashed near Naples yesterday. And players around the world gather in a West Sussex pub for the British and World Marbles Championship. Hello, I'm Karin Giannone. Welcome to BBC News Now. 3 hours of fast-moving news, interviews and reaction. America could stop trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine if there are no signs of progress in the next few days. That's the warning from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. French diplomats had said talks between the US, European powers and Ukraine in Paris yesterday made excellent progress. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the talks about a potential ceasefire had been encouraging. Along with envoy Steve Witkoff, he was meeting French President Emmanuel Macron, as well as representatives from other European countries. Before departing from Paris, Marco Rubio said America will decide within days if a Ukraine ceasefire is doable.
I think it's important to remind everybody that the Ukraine war is a terrible thing, but it's not our war. We didn't start it. The United States has been helping Ukraine over the last 3 years, and we want it to end. But it's not our war. I want everyone to understand that. And the reason why I make that point is the president has spent 87 days at the highest level of his government repeatedly taking efforts to bring this war to an end. We are now reaching a point where we need to decide and determine whether this is even possible or not, which is why we're engaging both sides. As you know, Ambassador Witkoff has had not 1, not 2, but 3 meetings with Vladimir Putin to determine the Russian perspective on this and understand what it would take for them to end it. We've, through General Kellogg, myself and others, have had repeated engagements with the Ukrainians. So we came here yesterday to sort of begin to talk about more specific outlines of what it might take to end the war, to try to figure out very soon, and I'm talking about a matter of days, not a matter of weeks, whether or not this is the war that can be ended. If it can, we're prepared to do whatever we can to facilitate that and make sure that it happens, that it ends in a durable and just way. If it's not possible, if we're so far apart that this is not going to happen, then I think the president's probably at a point where he's going to say, well, we're done.
Marco Rubio there. Well, his comments come as Ukraine says it signed a memorandum of intent on a minerals deal with the United States. The economy minister said the outline agreement paved the way for what she called an economic partnership agreement. Yulia Sviridenko announced the signing on social media but didn't provide further details. The move is a step towards a deal that would allow the US access to Ukraine's critical minerals as well as oil and gas. Previous reports indicated that an investment fund would be set up for Ukraine's reconstruction and would be managed by Kyiv and Washington. President Zelensky had been hoping to use the deal to secure a US security guarantee in his country in the event of a ceasefire deal with Russia. Let's just, before we hear from our correspondent in Ukraine, James Waterhouse, let's just show you pictures from Rome, because just in the last few minutes, US Vice President J.D. Vance is arriving there in Rome. He is going to be having talks there. There he is with Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, who we saw at the White House just a matter of hours ago. And that is what he is doing today in Rome. He's there for the weekend with his wife, Usha Vance. He is also hoping to meet the Pope, but we do know that Pope Francis, because of his health concerns in recent weeks, because of that lengthy stay in hospital, 5 weeks earlier this spring, it will be difficult for him to have a meeting of that sort. Let's just listen in. we are going to be talking about that visit by the US Vice President J.D. Vance to Italy, meeting Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister. We'll be talking about that in a few minutes' time with an Italian commentator. And we will also be hearing more from the US about that visit with a reporter from Politico in just around half an hour's time here on BBC News. But let's just go back to that development that Ukraine has signed a memorandum of intent on Thursday, stating that with the US, the countries intend to establish some kind of investment fund. This could be the first step towards a minerals deal. Our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse is in Odessa and gave us his assessment of the comments from US Secretary of State Marco Rubio over a peace deal more widely.
Yeah, I mean, the standout comments are that he said the president could say he's done. If there are no signs for the US of progress, if it seems that peace can't be achieved, Marco Rubio, has said Donald Trump has other priorities around the world. And it seems that America will stop trying to broker a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia if there aren't any more positive signs. So what does that mean for Ukraine? Well, Ukraine has engaged in America's timetable and vision for peace since a few notable flare-ups early on in Donald Trump's second term. But where America's patience has been tested has been with Russia, which has added more and more conditions to how it would like a ceasefire to be reached, but also how it's maintained its sizable demands, be it the complete control of 4 Ukrainian territories and the political capitulation of Ukraine. To the frustration of Kyiv, that impatience has not been followed up with any kind of condemnation really from Washington, nor further measures such as sanctions. I think it is a faint hope that the comments of Marco Rubio could be an attempt to apply pressure on Moscow. But I think what is more likely as a scenario here is that this could be a perilous moment for Ukraine politically when you consider that no more American military aid is set to arrive, and that a lack of a ceasefire continues to suit Russia more in this war of attrition where it is the bigger force. And if it's fighting Ukraine with only the help of Europe, then I think you'll see the Kremlin rigorously pursue its goal of trying to take as much Ukrainian territory as possible, as it continues to do today.
James Waterhouse, who's in Odessa. Italian police have confirmed a British couple are among the dead after a cable car crashed near Naples yesterday. 5 people were on the cable car at the time of the accident. 4 of them died, including the British couple. Operators say the carriage had been near the top of Mount Faito when one of the cables snapped. Our correspondent Rupert Wingfield-Hayes has more from Rome.
Well, so in the last couple of hours, we have had confirmation to the BBC from police in Naples that there are 2, what they describe as a British couple, are now confirmed to be among the dead. They have not been formally identified and they have not been officially named, but they have now said to us they are certain that there is a British couple and an Israeli citizen and an Italian citizen are the 4 who have died. And there is a 5th person who is in hospital, very seriously injured. They have not confirmed the nationality or the identity of that person. But we are now starting to get a clearer picture, at least of the victims of this accident. What we have not got really any clear picture of yet is why this accident happened. Very, very serious incident with this cable car coming down. A cable snapping and then this car plunging a long way down. This is on the top of a mountain with these very large, tall steel pylons that they go over, and this cable snapping and the car then just plunging into the forest below, shattering on impact, and these people being killed. It's really a sort of worst nightmare scenario for this sort of incident, but that investigation is just getting underway. They say the company that operates it said that it had been down for maintenance over the winter and had a full inspection before reopening 10 days ago for the spring season. So they say this is an unthinkable thing to happen, but it has happened. So clearly there are questions to be answered about the maintenance and the age of some of these systems in Italy. Italy is a very mountainous country. There are cable car systems all over Italy, and they are regularly used by locals and by tourists going to scenic spots. And it has to be said, this is not a one-off. A very similar incident happened just 4 years ago in the north of Italy, which killed 14 people. So you know, again, I think a lot of questions to be answered in this investigation as to the maintenance and the age of some of these systems.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the news. Iran has condemned a US attack on a fuel terminal in Yemen's Red Sea coast that's reported to have killed nearly 60 people. The Houthis, an Iranian-backed group, said more than 120 were hurt. TV footage showed burning lorries and Red Crescent workers removing bodies from the scene. The US military said the aim of the attack on the port of Ras Issa was to restrict supplies and funds for the group. The US military stepped up its attacks on Houthis a month ago. A former Credit Suisse boss has been confirmed as the main opposition candidate in Ivory Coast's presidential election. Tidjane Thiam was the only contender for the centre-right Democratic Party, the PDCI. He was forced to quit Credit Suisse 5 years ago over a spying scandal at the bank. A pocket watch that belonged to a Danish man who drowned in the sinking of the Titanic is going up for sale in Britain. Hans Christensen Givard was 27 when he died in the disaster in 1912. The lady's watch was recovered from his body in the freezing waters of the North Atlantic and has been kept by his family ever since. It's expected to fetch more than $60,000 at auction in Britain. Let's go back to those pictures from Rome, and we have here the US Vice President, J.D. Vance, and the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, and I'm not sure if we have a translator, but let's just take a listen.
Many others we will discuss today, but in any case, Italy and the United States are committed to enhance their strong cooperation. We think Italy can be a reliable and a serious partner in Europe, in the Mediterranean area, and so we are proud to have this special relation with the US and with this administration.
Great. Well, thank you, Prime Minister Meloni. It's wonderful to see you again. And I hope that's exactly what you said. Of course, she could have called me a jerk and I wouldn't know, but it would be in the most beautiful language imaginable, and so I wouldn't even get offended. But I appreciate our friendship, both between our nations, but also between us personally, and certainly the President sends his best regards to you, but to the people of Italy. I couldn't help, as I drove around these streets, we arrived this morning with my wife and our 3 young children, and we're looking forward to spending Easter here. But this is a place that was built by people that love humans and love God, and the streets, the buildings, the beautiful landscape and cityscape, I think it really lifts up the human spirit. So we're going to have some good conversations, but I also take some inspiration from being in this beautiful city filled with wonderful people, and so we're grateful to you, and of course to the people of Rome, the people of Italy, for their friendship and also for their warm welcome. We have a couple of important issues to discuss today. I want to update the Prime Minister on some of the negotiations between Russia, Ukraine, and also some of the things that have happened. Even in the past 24 hours, we think we have some interesting things to report on, of course, in private. So these negotiations, I won't prejudge them, but we do feel optimistic that we can hopefully bring this war, this very brutal war, to a close. I also, of course, want to talk to the Prime Minister about some of the economic relationships, very important between Italy and the United States. But, of course, we're having some big trade negotiations between not just Italy and the United States, but the whole European Union. We talked a great deal about that yesterday with the President, and we'll follow up on those conversations today. But most of all, just thrilled to be in the presence of a dear friend in a beautiful place with great people. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Vice President. Io l'ho capito. No, va bene, io lo capisco. We're okay. Okay, good. We did it alone.
Well, there we are. We came out of that because the pictures from Rome just came to an end there. We didn't need a translator for Giorgia Meloni because her English is extremely good, as it turned out. And it's just hearing there from J.D. Vance, interestingly, talking about what they're going to be talking about. Ukraine is going to feature. He said that we are optimistic that we can bring this horrific war to a close. And he's also been mentioning the possibilities of talking about a trade deal. And very warm words indeed for Italy, for Giorgia Meloni, calling her a dear friend, and looking forward to spending the weekend in Rome with his wife and 3 children. We will discuss this more, but around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Nearly 4 months since the fall of the Assad regime, Syria has appointed a new transitional government. Despite a fragile security across the country, Syrians are experiencing political freedoms they've been deprived of for 5 decades. But some fear the new Islamist-led government may be putting social and religious freedoms at risk. From Damascus, Lina Sinjab reports.
And action!
Behind the scene of a series in the making, Syrian soap operas gained fame across the Arab world. They provide a reflection of society and its changing dynamics. After the fall of Assad, Syrians enjoyed political freedom, but fear for the social ones.
I received all the support and facilitation from the people in charge of the media and the new government. But that doesn't mean anything in the long run. I am not optimistic at all about the coming period regarding what we are seeing or experiencing.
Damascus University reflects the mixed background of Syria's society. Now, a new mosque is being built on campus without notice and without building permissions. Students don't think this is a priority.
We are not just Muslims in Syria. It is a diverse society with different sects. The priority for us is to learn music, theatre, how to film. It is more important than building a mosque. We already have prayer rooms for people to perform religious duties.
On the streets, there are a lot of warning signs. These preachers drive through Christian neighborhoods advocating for Islam through loudspeakers. Locals are not happy. The man arguing in this video tells the preacher, "I am a Muslim and I don't want to hear your words."
This is Bab Sharqi neighborhood, or the Eastern Gate, in the heart of the historical Straight Street. It is a predominantly Christian neighborhood where Syrians from across the spectrum of the society come and enjoy a bustling late-night life. Several bars have been shut down because they're serving alcohol. Perhaps this is not the priority for many Syrians at the moment, but it's certainly sending signals that social freedoms are under threat. Almost all bars and restaurants that serve alcohol were closed, but after public pressure, they were temporarily open, provided they obtain a license. The fear is that they will never get it. Syria is known for its tolerant form of Islam, where the Sufi practice is more common. But even these Sufi worshippers are not safe. They were attacked and called infidels by hardline Salafists. I asked an imam if he worries a more radical Islam will take over.
It is impossible. Our society will not accept it. We have lived in harmony with different sects for years, even during difficult times. The Quran says it clearly. No compulsion in religion.
Syrians have been through a lot over the past decades. While the majority live in poverty, they do enjoy religious and social freedoms. Now some feel that these two are in the grip of a new, repressive Islamic order. Lina Sinjab, BBC News, Damascus.
Well, Lina is now here in London and we can speak to her now, I'm pleased to say. Lina, good to have you with us. How different are things to what you have been used to most of your life?
Probably 180 degrees different. It's completely liberated. I mean, we've seen pictures of people being freed from prison, but I think the whole country has been freed from, mental, psychological, political prison. I mean, wherever I go in Damascus, I talk to people, they say, we can breathe now, there is oxygen in the air. And actually walking in the streets, you can hear people, I mean, even children, street sellers, taxi drivers, who were known to be informants of the regime. Everyone is talking politics. Everyone is talking the future of Syria. Everyone is discussing the tiny details of what's happening, what the government's doing. Some agree, some disagree, which is incredible to see and witness.
And that key phrase you just used, I can talk to people, and people will talk to you. They're not terrified to speak to a journalist.
I mean, the minute they see a camera, they just come and approach you. Before that, the minute we have a camera, we have minders with us, we have security around us, and people will never talk to us unless the authorities or the security will set up people to come and say what they want them to say. Now people grab us. They want to tell their stories. They want to share what they've been through, and they want to share their view of the future of Syria, which is also incredible.
And then there is the worry about what this new government will mean for freedoms. How optimistic are people that it will not become a totalitarian, frightening state like they were used to before?
Well, you've seen in this package, and I've written a long piece online which people can find that's in depth. The new authority, Ahmed al-Shara, he wants to have a country that is accepted by the region, that is accepted internationally, a country that can lift the sanctions and be rebuilt, liberal democracy. But of course, everything that you see he's doing right now is basically having people that he trusts around him. Some would argue that he's also, he put some of his family members in positions. So it's like really a new dictatorship in the making for some people. But at the same time, you know, there are others within his own government that are hardliners, that are Salafi, and they want to seize the opportunity to impose Islamic rule on the country. I don't think al-Shara himself wants to impose Islamic rule or restricts freedoms for people, but there are others who are, and probably he won't be able to stop them because they are the ones who helped him to come in power. But at the same time, the society will not accept that. There is the majority of Syrians are Sunni Muslims, but they're not radicals. They're religious. They all observe Islam, but they're very tolerant and Sufi kind of practice. That people, you see Damascus and Syria is free on social level, and there are concerns that these kind of freedoms now are under threat.
And after what Syria has been through for more than a decade and what people have had to learn to live with, what do Syrians want now?
I think it depends on who you're talking to. The majority are really living in severe poverty. 90% of the population are under the poverty line. They want food, they want decent living, they want electricity, they want services to run. But I think at the end of the day, the intellects are the ones who help shape the future of a country. And I think most of them, they want to see democracy, they want to see equal citizenship. With the situation that we're seeing, what's happened to the Alawites in the coastal cities, I think there are really serious calls of having a country run by the rule of law, and that provides equal rights for everyone in Syria. And I think that's the only way that the country will move forward.
Lina, good to have you here with us in London and see your reporting from Damascus. Thank you. Well, you can see more about what life is like now in Syria by visiting the BBC News website. You can click on the links to In Depth, and that is where Lina has written a detailed account. So plenty more from Lina on the BBC website. 2 people have died and several others have been injured after a shooting at Florida State University. Police in Tallahassee say the suspected attacker was shot and wounded by officers. He's been named as 20-year-old Phoenix Ickner, who's a student at the university and the son of a serving policewoman. Witnesses on the ground described a chaotic scene.
And I saw the gunman get out of his car, and he emerged with a shotgun. And there was another boy wearing a white polo shirt who I saw him take aim at him. And apparently, as I heard from him later, he pulled the trigger, heard a click, and the gun didn't go off.
He was shooting some kind of a handgun, one-armed. As soon as I heard that going on, I hightailed it out of there, ran through the Union. As I was running through the Union, I pointed at multiple people and said, "You call 911, call 911 now, we have an active shooter."
Just show you the scene in Rome, and this Good Friday, it is the arrival of the US Vice President J.D. Vance. Just in the last half hour, we saw him go in and talk with the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. He is now talking in private with her, and we'll be talking about what they are talking about in a few minutes' time. Plenty more to come. You're with BBC News. I'm Karin Giannone. The headlines. The US Secretary of State has warned America could stop trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine unless progress is made in the coming days. The US Vice President J.D. Vance has arrived in Rome for talks with the Italian Prime Minister. British beef farmers have urged the Prime Minister not to rush into a trade deal with the US as businesses are worried they might end up paying the price if standards are compromised. And a groundbreaking project to suck carbon out of the sea begins on England's south coast. And a bit later, we'll be bringing you players from around the world gathering in a pub in West Sussex today for the British and World Marbles Championship. Now, the American Senator Chris Van Hollen says he's met a Salvadorian man wrongfully deported to his home country by the Trump administration in a case that sparked outrage in the United States and beyond. Abrego Garcia was detained in Maryland last month and expelled after President Donald Trump invoked a rarely used wartime authority. The US Supreme Court says he should return, but it's unclear if that will happen. Let's speak to Julia Manchester, who's political reporter for The Hill. Julia, good to see you bright and early there in Washington. How much coverage is this deportation story getting and the fate of this man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia?
It's certainly getting a lot of coverage here in the United States, particularly in the greater Washington, D.C. area, because we know that Abrego Garcia was living in Maryland. But it's certainly, I think, dividing Republicans and Democrats across the country and really on Capitol Hill. Of course, you have Chris Van Hollen, for example, traveling to El Salvador to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, really doing a lot of media appearances there and really pushing, the publicity of that case out there. You also have a number of Democratic lawmakers who have requested that a congressional delegation go to El Salvador. Of course, Republicans very much on the other side of this issue. It was remarkable watching a Trump administration press conference the other day at the White House in which Caroline Leavitt showed court documents that were obtained by the Department of Homeland Security that essentially detailed a domestic abuse or a domestic assault allegation that was made against Kilmar Abrego Garcia years ago by his wife. She also included the mother of an American who was killed by a member of the MS-13 gang. And that's what the Trump administration really here is arguing. They claim that Abrego Garcia is a member of MS-13, but his family very much denies that. But at the end of the day, this isn't necessarily about whether he's a member of MS-13 or not. It could be, according to the Trump administration, but this is about the Trump administration essentially defying a court order. So critics saying this is a constitutional crisis.
Right, and presumably experts are looking at potential ways that this man could be brought back, but the Trump administration remaining resolute on this.
Very resolute. And like I said, for them, there's obviously the courts issue and how they defied a court order to bring him back. And we know that the Trump administration at one point said Abrego Garcia was mistakenly deported to El Salvador. But now they're essentially pushing this national security claim, this claim of MS-13 gang members, which they say Abrego Garcia was about. So they're saying this is about keeping the country safe and making sure these, as they would say, criminals are deported. And that sort of opened the door to another, conversation here in the United States. You heard President Trump in his meeting with the president of El Salvador, Bukele, earlier this week, talking about the idea of potentially deporting homegrown U.S. criminals to El Salvador or other countries. So that would essentially mean deporting U.S. citizens. We don't really know how that would play out, but that's been a conversation.
Julia, we've just seen in the last few minutes J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, being welcomed, a very warm welcome for him in Rome. The Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was at the White House on Thursday. A lot of contact going on between the US and Italy. Do they see each other as aligned?
So Giorgia Meloni is such an interesting figure because she represents the conservative global right in many ways that we've seen President Trump seek to align himself with. She, of course, spoke at the Conservative Political Action Conference here in Washington, D.C. earlier this year. She's considered an ally of President Trump. But at the same time, I think she's interesting because she has to walk a fine line with the Trump administration. Remember, Italy, as well as a number of the European Union, other European countries around the world are trying to work with the Trump administration on this issue of tariffs, and Trump seemingly not moving on that issue, even though he had a lot of kind words to say about Meloni yesterday. He said that she wasn't able to convince him to drop tariffs or change his stance. On top of that, you have these comments from Secretary of State Marco Rubio earlier today saying that if there isn't progress on the Ukraine peace talks in the coming days, the U.S. could essentially drop them. If you're a European country, someone like Meloni looking at that, that's got to be somewhat concerning because you're in closer proximity to Ukraine. You want to ensure that there is that security from Russia, that NATO protection. And if the U.S. is backing away, that raises a lot of questions about what the future looks like in terms of Europe's relationship with Russia and the future of Ukraine.
We have run out of time, Julia. I wish we had more time to talk. Julia Manchester, look forward to talking to you again. Political reporter from The Hill, joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, as Julia was mentioning there, America could stop trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine if there are no signs of progress in the next few days. That's the warning from the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. French diplomats had said talks between the US, European powers and Ukraine in Paris yesterday made excellent progress. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the talks about a potential ceasefire had been encouraging. Along with envoy Steve Witkoff, he was meeting French President Emmanuel Macron as well as representatives from other European countries. And it comes as Ukraine says it has signed what it called a memorandum of intent on a minerals deal with the United States. The economy minister said the outline agreement paved the way for what she called an economic partnership agreement. Let's get some reaction to this and speak to a Ukrainian MP, Lisa Yasko, who joins us from Kyiv. Thank you for talking to us, Lisa. What do you know about this document and what do you think of it?
Well, if to be honest, we don't really have more details than just the fact that the memorandum was signed, that the main idea is to create a reconstruction fund. We fully support that. But there's been so many speculations around the mineral deal around last week. So for us, that's the moment when we actually want to see the real text. What are the details of that? Because we're not going to sell our land to anyone. We want to have equality and just deal, and that would have fair positions of all the parts involved. And this is what we want to see, but it's not available yet.
And presumably what you also want to see in any deal that you sign is some kind of security guarantee from the United States.
Definitely. So the reason why minerals deals is important to us is because we want to have economic interests of different countries in Ukraine that will also include security guarantees, because we don't want to be in a situation when Russia will be putting money here or buying, I don't know, people here. We want to have the economy and security as the package of stability for the future. That's why this is very important for us.
The problem is that there doesn't seem to be any sign of the Trump administration wanting to give that to you. Donald Trump's stance has always been that the amount of American business being done inside Ukraine and with Ukraine should be enough of a deterrent against attack.
Well, that's not enough, but we have to understand that the style of American leadership has changed recently. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are not involved in building security of the future, but they want to show more how much do they care about their own American citizens. And I think that's understandable, but that's also dangerous for the world. And that's why the role of Europe is very important now, where the public polls, but also political will and leadership is showing lots of support to Ukraine, but also there are a lot of actions done to make your own country stronger in terms of security. And as Ukrainian and as European, I really appreciate that. I think that's very important to our future.
I wonder what your thoughts are about that warning we heard from the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio just a couple of hours ago, saying that America may stop trying to broker a peace deal if there's no sign of progress in the coming days. Who do you think that is aimed at?
Well, I have a few options, possible explanations of that. The first one, I think, comes from the fact that there were so many high stakes that Trump initially told to Americans that he will stop the war in 24 hours, and it never happened. The talks and conversations with Putin are going hard. And the third moment here that is important to mention is that Trump is trying to push other countries, European countries, to make more commitment into the security, while, as Trump says, America will be dealing with themselves. I think such statements are not productive, but they go along with the style that we've seen in the recent weeks coming from the US.
OK, Lisa Yasko, Ukrainian MP, joining us from Kyiv. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now let's talk about Russia. The Kremlin has insisted some progress has been made on peace talks regarding that possible ceasefire in Ukraine, and that comes as the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio gave that warning that the US may stop trying to broker a peace deal if there's no sign of progress in the coming days. It has been an intense few days for Russian diplomacy. On Thursday, Vladimir Putin met with the Qatari Emir in Moscow, where they discussed the Israel-Gaza war as well as energy and other regional issues. Mr. Putin's also been meeting with the Iranian foreign minister, seeking to reassure Tehran that any improvement of relations with the US wouldn't affect ties between Russia and Iran. Now, Russia's also suspended its ban on the Taliban, which it had designated a terrorist organisation for more than 2 decades. It's a move that potentially paves the way for Moscow to normalise ties with the leadership of Afghanistan. Let's speak to Vitaly Shevchenko of BBC Monitoring, Russia editor. Vitaly, good to see you. So much diplomacy going on for Russia in the last few days. What are they up to?
Well, Russia, as always under Vladimir Putin's rule, is trying to re-establish its place in the international arena, despite Western attempts to ostracize it, to exclude it. And it would appear that Vladimir Putin's efforts are working, really, because what we've been seeing over the past weeks are a lot of talks and diplomatic engagement with and between players which the West has traditionally seen as absolute untouchables. We saw Steve Witkoff's, the US envoy's, meeting with Vladimir Putin last week. Then yesterday, Vladimir Putin met the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, and the Iranian Foreign Minister is meeting Steve Witkoff in Rome tomorrow. So what's going on? I think one hint at what Russia is trying to achieve is what the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, and the Iranian Foreign Minister has been saying today, because they're meeting in Moscow today. And they're saying, OK, we're talking about Iran's nuclear program, but we would like to kind of stay together and also get America on our side. Both Russia and Iran are saying that whatever deal is achieved between America and Tehran on Iran's nuclear program, it should really involve Russia as well. So there's a possibility that we might be seeing an emergence of some sort of axis involving Russia, Iran, and America, which is was completely unthinkable until recently. And it's bad news for the West, its unity on countries such as Russia and Iran, and also bad news for the West's allies, such as Ukraine, where, as we've seen from latest missile strikes carried out by Russia, Moscow's appetites are still absolutely undiminished.
Because, of course, we will see more meetings between the Iranians and the Americans tomorrow. We saw talks last Saturday between Iran and the US. Talking about what's happened with the Taliban, Vitaly, the move to unprescribe them, delist them as a terrorist organisation. How should we interpret that?
Well, from one point of view, it's a technicality, because if it's designated as a terrorist organization, it's banned. And despite the ban, Russian officials have been meeting with Taliban delegations for a while now. So a lot of people have been asking, well, look, you've banned them, now you're meeting them. It doesn't make sense. So they have now lifted that ban, but also the closer cooperation or closer level of engagement with the Taliban suggests that Russia is keen to establish or re-establish its presence in Afghanistan and that part of the world generally. If it's to the detriment of Western interests, it's so much the better for Russia. So it could be argued that Vladimir Putin has had certain amount of success in trying to break through this isolation that the West has tried to impose on him in the wake of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And all these talks involving Russian officials with various countries, including the United States, means that Russia is sort of back in the international arena. And one big date to look forward to for Vladimir Putin is 9th of May, Victory Day, when a big parade is going to be held in Moscow. And unlike previous years, Moscow is expecting a significant number of foreign leaders attending that parade, including visitors from the EU. So has Russia broken through isolation? It would appear to be the case.
Very briefly, Vitaly, we have heard Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, speaking in the last hour or so, saying a bit of progress has been made on Ukraine, effectively that the ball is in Washington's court.
That's what Moscow has been saying recently. When the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, was asked about Washington's threat to walk out of these talks about Ukraine, he said, well, progress has been achieved, but more difficult negotiations will have to be carried out.
OK, Vitaly, thank you very much. Vitaly Shevchenko, Russia editor from BBC Monitoring, thank you. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. A groundbreaking environmental project has started operating on England's south coast, which scientists say could eliminate 100 tonnes of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere each year. Our environment correspondent Jonah Fisher has more.
The oceans help regulate our climate, absorbing about a quarter of the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide that we emit. And with global temperatures rising, the question is being asked as to whether the sea's carbon-absorbing properties could be harnessed to cool things down. And that's what scientists are trying to do here in Weymouth on the south coast, tucked away behind this Sea Life Centre. We're the first broadcasters to have a look around since the pilot plant became operational.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Jonah. Welcome to Sea Cure.
Great.
Come in.
The process starts with water being sucked in from the sea and acid added.
Round here is what we refer to as the seawater stripper.
This is where the carbon dioxide is removed from the water.
In some ways, this is like a fizzy drink, because at the point of adding the acid, we've got a lot of CO2 in the water, and it wants to come out. So much like when you open a fizzy drink and it froths, that's the CO2 coming out of that fizzy drink.
The carbon is then extracted from the air for possible storage. And an alkali is added to the seawater before it's pumped back out.
So this is the low carbon water. It will flow from here towards the sea, where it will immediately start absorbing more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and in turn play a very small part in reducing global warming.
The advantage of removing carbon from the water rather than directly from the atmosphere is that it's there in much greater concentrations.
If this sort of thing works, does it mean we don't have to worry so much about cutting our carbon dioxide emissions?
Yeah, not at all. We absolutely need to be cutting those emissions as fast as we can. This kind of technology comes in to help deal with the things that we can't reduce the emissions from, or at least we have no solutions to do so at the moment, and potentially after that to help us move back from some of the worst effects of climate change.
There are still plenty of questions about this approach, including the amount of power it needs and the possible impact of low-carbon water on marine life. But climate scientists say some carbon removal will almost certainly be needed in the future. And so the search is now on for the best way to do it. Jonah Fisher, BBC News in Weymouth.
Now it's the British and World Marbles Championship today. It's been held on almost every Good Friday since 1588. We've been into the archives, but not quite that far back. Take a look at this from 1937.
In peaceful Sussex, what's all the shouting about? Haven't you heard? It's the day of the championship, and here's the entry list. The crowd is in a frenzy of excitement. All eyes are on the starter. They're up at the post, and they're off. First, the Crawley Terror jumps into the lead, hotly challenged by Cook, the giant.
Isn't that lovely? Players around the world have again made it to the Greyhound pub, that same place in West Sussex in Tinsley Green. The winner is the person who knocks the most marbles out of a ring by flicking their own shooter marble with their thumb. Let's go there live and speak to Julia McCarthy-Fox, who's been organising the World Marble Championships for over 30 years. Julia, thank you for joining us. Your late husband organised this event. You took this over. Just tell us about it. It's been going on for a couple of hours already today, has it?
It has, yeah. It's a bit chaotic here, to be honest. I was in the middle of refereeing a tournament and trying to do an interview at the same time, which didn't work terribly well. So I've just suspended play for a moment to do this.
Oh, wow.
So we basically, the game is between two teams of 6 players. And they shoot one player from one team, one from the next. And the idea is to try and knock out over half of the marbles in the ring. It starts with 49 in the middle. And yeah, basically that's the object of it. We've had some quite good play this morning. We've had a couple of players who've knocked out. One knocked out 10 marbles in one turn, and I think the other one knocked out 20. So that's a pretty good start to the day. It makes the matches go quickly.
We're very grateful that you've suspended play to talk to us, and we won't keep you too long.
I don't think anyone's noticed, to be honest.
And now the competition's been going on there at that very same pub since 1932, I believe.
Yeah. Our trophy dates back to 1932 and has all winners from every year on it. There was a break for 2 years during the Second World War, and then we went for 2 years for COVID.
Now, I believe that you are there in Tinsley Green, less than 5 miles away from Gatwick Airport, which I suppose makes that very convenient for some of your international players, because people do travel for this.
We do. We have, well, I'm living here now, so I came on Monday. There's one team that has most of their players for about 40 years in their team. One has lived in Texas for about 6 or 7 years. He comes every year, and the other one lives in France. So he has an easy journey, really, but he thinks he comes a long way.
And how intense does it get? How many people come to watch it, and what do the winners get?
The winners get the trophy and they get an individual medal. It's a knockout edition, so it doesn't really matter if you can play well or not, because inevitably you lose half of your teams in the first round anyway, and then half of them in every single round. So it sorts out the good players from the players that are so away. So everybody can play and just take their chances in the draw. We had a bit of controversy earlier today with a new team who tried to play by a different set of out left the area. They weren't terribly happy, but
oh dear. We're losing the line a little bit to you, Julia, but so just the rules are quite easy to understand. You can get beginners turning up and just playing, can you?
Yes, you can, yes.
And I'm very curious because I remember collecting marbles when I was at primary school. I loved my collection. And can you play with any kind of marble?
As long as it's smaller than 3/4 of an inch in diameter and not ball bearing, then you can.
No ball bearings. We are really grateful, Julia. Thank you very much, and we wish you many more years of hosting and organising this event. That's Julia McCarthy-Fox, who is the World Marble Championships organiser there from West Sussex in the UK. Thank you very much, and we wish them well for the rest of today's play. There is plenty more to come here on BBC News. Do stay with us. I'm Karin Giannone here in London.